welcome to episode 2 of the Powerful Pathways Micro Podcast. I'm Bennie, former senior leader in education and currently director of Adara Education, a consultancy that supports leaders to be better aware of EDI. And as usual, I'm joined by my formidable colleague, who I will let introduce herself.
I'm Malarvilie I'm also a former leader working within education and director of Mal CPD consultancy and coaching, focusing on communication skills and emotional intelligence for leaders.
And you are absolutely brilliant at it, I might add.
As are
But it
you.
hasn't, thank you. It hasn't always been easy. Today we're talking about breaking barriers. And we talk about barriers as this kind of nebulous term. So let's really dig into it. What barriers have you faced throughout your career?
When I was thinking about this question, I found it really difficult to narrow it down because when you think of societal barriers from the media and everything you read and watch and um, things like that, you don't realize what barriers are being put into your mind, into your subconscious, because you're just reading about good white people and bad black and brown people. So in that sense, I would say that there's an internal barrier
Mhm.
that I faced as a young person. And looking back now, I realize how much that affected me
Yeah,
because I didn't feel that I was good enough, that I could. Um, for example, at university, my history lecturers who was working with me, was mentoring me for my dissertation, said, "Oh, you should do the MA and blah blah blah." She gave me the number, she gave me a contact. I didn't pursue it because I was like, "That's ridiculous.
yeah.
People like me don't, do that." And another one of my history lecturers at university said, "Send me your CV and see if I can get you a job at the university." And I was like, "Oh, university lecturers don't look like me." That's
Yeah,
I was too gutless at the time to go for it
yeah.
because I thought no, they'll find me out that I'm not that good
And it's
actually.
interesting that you use that word gutless, because it's not
Yeah,
really gutlessness. It's that kind of internalized oppression that sometimes as a global majority person just seeps in. You
yeah,
know, you
yeah.
can't help it. It's there.
That's
I
it.
had that. I
Mm.
definitely had that. And, added to my Asian identity, my South Asian identity, East African Asian identity, minority within a minority, my sexuality, my disability status, the fact that I'm a woman, all of these things kind of created these perceived barriers and real barriers.
Yeah,
And so, you're constantly kind of thinking, am I right for this? Am I good enough for
yeah,
this?
yeah,
And deselecting when you realize actually the voice in your head is saying, no, it's not for me. My people don't do this.
yes. My people. I wasn't sure who my people was, but they didn't look like me.
No, well, this is the thing,
That's it.
again, it's that, even within our communities, we stood out in various
Yeah,
ways.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah,
you kind of get that sense of I know who I am, I know how people perceive me, but I don't know who I am, and I don't know how people perceive me.
yeah,
Um, it's a tricky one. But then you end
yeah,
up being the person, the only person of your kind, if I suppose for
yeah,
want of the word, in leadership situations, and
yeah.
you have to be the pioneer all of a sudden. Everyone's
That's
looking at you.
it. You talked about intersectionality. I mean, with you, it's like a huge Venn diagram.
So many overlaps.
Intersecting, overlapping all over the place. For me, a huge barrier was being working class
Right, okay.
and having a very Cockney accent, and both within my parents' community, because when I did speak Tamil, I spoke it in a Cockney accent, a very
Brilliant.
English accent, and so I clearly didn't belong. Going to university as well,
Yeah.
people assumed things about me because of my strong Cockney accent. They're like, well, she's obviously thick or something.
Yeah, assumptions I think are really standard when it comes to global majority people. I had assumptions of I suppose, not being particularly academic, but the feeling I got sometimes where people would have to, were over explaining to me. Like you might not understand this unless I speak really slowly. And I was like, the only way I won't understand is if I don't hear you. And I'm not wearing a hearing aid. I can't hear you. But
Yeah.
this idea that people were treading on eggshells around me in some ways, and yet willing to overlook me in others,
Mm,
was quite a difficult place to be. Do you
yeah.
think that I am not capable?
Mm,
Um, because I haven't had the background of this person over here who's very different from me. Um, and so, there was the assumption I needed more support and time, which meant promotion came slower.
mm.
Um, and I ended up feeling quite resentful about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember at school, my deputy head saying, "Oh, what are your plans now?" And when I said, "Oh, I'm applying for university," she laughed. She was like, "Oh, that well, good luck," kind of thing. And I was just looked at it like, "Well, of course I'm going to university, you know." And like most of my cohort didn't go to university, but I
Mm,
was absolutely determined. And I think that really got to me. That
mm,
people made assumptions, not only because of my background, but because my brothers and sisters didn't go to university. So again, that had an impact on me when I became a teacher because I made sure that I didn't make any of those assumptions about children.
yeah.
And I made sure that they didn't have those assumptions about themselves.
You talk about education as a kind of step to overcome some of those barriers. What did you do? How did you move out of that space?
Um, what from being in East London to university? I was
Well,
just
I mean, a barrier in itself. The
which
A12
is a
is really
university.
tricky.
Yeah, I mean, like it's that in itself was huge. I mean, I couldn't. I struggled to get to university. I really did. I was a clever kid. I was in the gifted and talented groups in primary school,
Yeah.
but the school I went to was very poor, awful, and there was not a lot of teaching going on in that school. I ended up teaching myself a lot of
Yeah.
things. So GCSE maths, I failed it. Well, I got a D the first time,
Mm.
and then I resat, and the night school teacher, was rubbish. So I went to W.H. Smith, got myself a revision book, taught myself,
Mm.
nailed the exam.
Yeah.
And I did the same with A levels as well. That A level politics, and the teacher was awful.
Mm.
So again, I contacted the exam boards and um, got all the past papers known to man.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
everything, got all the material, taught myself an entire A level, and I actually got a better result in history, which I was very passionate about. So yeah, I think I I got myself out.
Yeah.
I forced it. I had this um, whenever I felt down, I had this post-it note on my mirror that had three words.
Yeah.
And yes, I swallowed the thesaurus as a child. I had a thesaurus by the bed. I
I'm
love
not holding this against you. I love words.
no, and like it was perseverance, diligence, and sedulous. And I kept looking at that and telling myself, yes, I am, and I will do this. I will do this. I will do this
Yeah.
because it was barrier after barrier. I didn't get to uni till I was 20,
Yeah.
and again, I didn't. Even though I knew I wanted to be a teacher when I was 17, I didn't become a teacher. Well, I didn't do my teacher training until 28.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was a long, long, long journey.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that commitment to education kind of is a strand here because that was again how I overcame barriers that I was facing. I thought if I could be the most educated I could be, um, then there would be an authenticity. I'd be seen as academic. And so I committed to learning. I did my master's in English. I went on to do leadership courses. I went on to do my NPQH, the professional qualification for headship. And that was idea that I could ask for those as well, that I had to really learn in order to
Mm.
overcome some of those barriers. And it felt like being audacious, like I
Yes.
deserve this. Can I have it, please? And so, my
Yeah.
school paid for certain things, schools paid for certain things. But it was in the asking that I
Mm.
was able to kind of access that kind of thing. And it was through that I think one of the biggest ways of overcoming barriers was finding networks, finding like-minded people. Um,
Mm.
so, when Women Ed came along and I met Hannah Wilson, and, joined that network, and BayMed came along, and then LGBT Ed came along, and then Hannah and I co-founded Diverse Educators, I realized there were more people like me than I thought, like
Yeah.
us, and suddenly we were all having these conversations and it felt like, okay, well, they've overcome that barrier, maybe
Mm.
I could do that too. And so
Yeah.
I know it seems trite, that you can't be what you can't see. Only when I saw people did I realize what I could be.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and that made a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that sense of it's very, very difficult being in a room where nobody else is like you.
Yeah, I know.
And I think it's only when I went to Malaysia.
A long way to go.
I, it's a long way to go. Suddenly, or if you go to a temple or something,
Yeah.
that you're no longer a minority. And I think that there's a comfort in that. How have you helped others overcome barriers?
Well, I think kind of shining a light on some of the things that I suppose I didn't realize about myself as I progressed through my career. And part of that has been through mentoring, formal and informal over the years, and then moving into the coaching space, which I know, we are both a part of. You're certainly far more experienced than I am. But for me, it was this idea that, it doesn't matter who you are, you can be a leader. Leadership is not predicated on a particular identity, that everybody brings something new to it. And so it's kind of leadership outside of the mold. You don't have to be a cookie cutter leader. Your characteristics, your values, your strengths, your persona will always be what they are. And how do you leverage that to be the best leader you can be? But you do a lot of work with coaching, so you will have seen similar things, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That quite often the people I work with, they have this view of leadership, like you say, the cookie cutter leadership, like you take it off the shelf and they feel they don't fit into that. And I'm often saying to them, it doesn't have to be that way. You can that.
Yeah, it's reassurance, that that you don't have to change everything about yourself
Yeah,
to go into leadership positions, that you're the foundation of who you are can be solid enough.
yeah,
um I've certainly coached people who have said, well, I don't look like this, I don't sound like this, I don't talk like this, therefore how am I ever going to? Who, through our coaching conversations have found their space,
mm,
and found, how their qualities can support them on their own journeys. And I think that's why coaching is so important, that,
yeah,
you need that permission to explore.
yeah,
Um, and so many times it's been just quite often a light bulb moment. It's like, oh yeah, actually, I can do this.
yeah.
I don't need to be defined by other people's expectations of me.
So I've been coaching quite a few leaders from diverse backgrounds lately, and the barriers that they are facing, quite often they're being gaslit. I mean, brilliant leaders who are like caged birds.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons rather, we've come up with the Powerful Pathways
Yeah.
program.
Well, the Powerful Pathways program is 5 modules where we go through powerful conversations, things like having a powerful presence.
Yeah, and the link will be
Yeah,
in the comments.
yeah,
So feel free to join us. We're looking forward to using our coaching skills to support other leaders to break barriers.